So, you know, they just, you know, help perpetuate this. When the 14th Amendment was passed, it specifically said Indians are not citizens. That's because Indians, Native American Indians, are subject to tribal law. And tribal law was separate and apart from the United States government. And that is true today. I know because I used to practice law in a small town where there was an Indian reservation. And a child born on the reservation by Indian tribal law could not be taken off the reservation, I mean, in a custody suit. So if a mother was not part of the tribe, she wanted to divorce the father, the child stayed with the tribe. And so it was like its own government, and it had all these separate little governments all over the country. So Indians were not citizens for that very reason. Their allegiance was to the tribe and not to the United States government. But then in 1924, all the American Indians were declared citizens. So that's no longer the case. So after the 14th Amendment, up to this day, there's never been a case, a test case in front of the Supreme Court about what we call anchor babies. Never. There were two cases that came up. The first one in 1884. Trying to think, the 14th Amendment was what? 1868. So this was about 20 years later. And it was Elk versus Williams, and the Supreme Court decided that the phrase subject to its jurisdiction was interpreted to exclude children of ministers, consuls, and citizens of foreign states born within the United States. The petitioner, or the plaintiff in this case, was an American Indian. He had renounced his tribe. He had been traveling around the country. He was not a citizen, and so he sued the United States government for citizenship, and they said, sorry, bud, you're a member of a tribe. That's it. And so he was considered to be foreign born because he was born in the tribe. So he's not an American citizen. The next one was in 1889, and this was the Wong Kim Ark case. Wong Kim Ark was a child of legal immigrants, all right? He was born in the United States. He left as an adult. He wanted to come back. They wouldn't let him in because they said, you're not a citizen, and he sued and said, yes, I am. My parents were here, you know, and I was born here. So the Supreme Court decided that because his parents were domiciled here, domiciled means to remain indefinitely, and they were legal, that he was a citizen. So the ruling was that if you're born to legal immigrants that intend to remain here, they assume your allegiance is to this country and you are granted citizenship. Those are the only two cases right on point. And both of them do not, you know, just specifically say no citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. So then that went on, and then in 1982 there was a case, Plyler versus Doe out of Texas. This was a class action lawsuit against the state of Texas. The state of Texas was withholding state funds to schools that allowed children of illegal immigrants to go there. So they sued, and the United States Supreme Court said, no, children of illegal immigrants have a right to an education in this country, same as, you know, every other child. And you cannot withhold funds, and you cannot prevent a child of illegal immigrants from attending school. Because the assumption was, and the Supreme Court said, that these children would grow up and become legal, and we wanted them to be educated when that happened. Okay, so it was a huge assumption that they just made. And the children they were specifically talking about were not born in the United States. In this case, these children were born in another country, and they came here illegally. All right? So none of these children were born in the United States. But this is where we get our current anchor baby law from. And there was a footnote in there by the Justice Brennan, and he said, there's no distinction with respect to the 14th Amendment between resident aliens whose entry is lawful and resident aliens whose entry is unlawful. I mean, he, did point out the fact one's lawful, one's not. He said there's no difference. But still, he was talking about children born outside the country that came in. The federal government has taken this, and somehow it has evolved to granting citizenship to every child born on United States soil. And that's crazy. United Kingdom and I think all of Europe now did away with that in the 1980s, where if you were born in their country, you're granted automatic citizenship. They don't do that anymore. We're practically the only country left that does that. And so everybody's talking about it, and it's time to do something about it. Okay, so how did this evolve from this case? That's the question I was trying to find out. That's the answer. How did we get to the state now? Because now it's important whether you're citizenship. Way back when the country began, when the 14th Amendment was created, when it was ratified, there was no immigration policy for the United States. None at all. And so this wasn't an issue. And then citizenship, people applied for citizenship if they grew up in this country, if they needed it for whatever reason. So I went back and I tried to pinpoint exactly what happened. And so I looked up the history of birth certificates and discovered that birth certificates were not mandatory till the early 20th century. So that was one of the things that, once everybody had to have a birth certificate, then you had a declaration of a child born in this country. And then there was the Social Security Act of 1935, which created Social Security numbers. And it was the evolution of the Social Security number that really, brought this to where it is today. Because when it first started, you only needed a Social Security number if you were a tax-paying worker. And so you filed it. And then as we all know, as time went on, it was used for everything. And to get any benefit now in this country, you need a Social Security number, which means you have to be eligible to get that Social Security number. And now that is the importance of the Acre Baby and the sponsorship. Legal immigrants can get Social Security numbers.